Hi students, in this video we are going to see how an electroscope is used. An electroscope is made up of a couple of very thin metal leads that hang down near to each other. They are connected to a metal rod that hangs upward and ends in a knob at the end. Here we have a charged electroscope. You see that the leads are open because let's say it's negatively charged. The negatively charged leads will repel each other, so they will stay open. And this is a neutral electroscope. You see that the leads are closed because they are neutral. There's no net force attracting or repelling each other. Let's see what happens when a charged object is close to a neutral electroscope. Let's say a negatively charged object approach near a neutral electroscope. It will repel the negative charges at the knob to the leads, so the knob will be positively charged. So you just change the distribution of the charges. The negative charges will be at the leads, so they will be negatively charged and open, and the knob will be positively charged. But still the charge of electroscope is 0. If you approach a positively charged object to a neutral object, so it will attract the negative charges to the knob, so the positive charges will stay at the leads, so they will repel each other and open. So again, you change the charge distribution on the electroscope. The leads are open with positively charged and the knob is negatively charged, but still the total charge of the electroscope is 0. In contact, the behavior of the leads depends on the amount of charges of the object and the electroscope. Now we are going to examine the 3 conditions. Let's say the charge of the object is positive and has an amount of QA, and the charge of electroscope is also positive and has an amount of QB. And let's assume that they are identical, so share the total charge equally. If the charge of A is smaller than charge of B, let's say A has a charge of plus 2Q and B has a charge of plus 6Q. So after they are in contact, they will share the total charge. So after the contact, they share the total charge and the charge of the electroscope will become plus 4Q. So you see that the charge of the electroscope decreases, so the leads will close. If the charge of A is bigger than the charge of B, let's say the A has a charge of plus 6Q and B has a charge of plus 2Q. So after the contact, they share the total charge and the charges of each become plus 4Q. So you see that the charge of electroscope increase, so the leads will open. If the charge of the electroscopes are equal, let's say both they have plus 4Q, 4Q, so there will be no change after the contact, so the leads will stay still. If the object and the electroscope have opposite sign of charges, then what would happen? Let's examine it. If the charge of A is smaller than the charge of B, let's say A has a charge of minus 2Q and B has a charge of plus 6Q. So the total charge is plus 4Q and share them plus 2Q plus 2Q. So you see that the amount of charge of the electroscope decrease, so the leads will close a little. If the charge of A is bigger than B, let's say A has a charge of minus 6Q and B has a charge of plus 2Q. After they share, there will be minus 2Q. So you see that the sign of the charge of the electroscope changed. It was first positively charged, then become negatively charged. So leaves first closed totally and then open. If they have equal amount of charges, let's say plus 2q, minus 2q and plus 2q, so you see that the total charge is 0, so they will become neutral, so this will totally closed. Now let's examine the induction. If a negatively charged object is approached to a positively charged electroscope, there's no contact. These negative charges will repel the negative charges at the knob to the lid, so the lid will close. It will close a little bit or totally, or close and then open. If the same sign of charges, a positively charged object is approached to a positively charged electroscope, then these positive charges will attract the negative charges at the lid, so the lid will be more positively charged and the lid will open. So here we can generalize that the opposite sign of charges in induction, the lids close. If they have the same sign of charges, then the lids will open. There's a special condition here. If a charged object is touched to an open curve from outside, they share the total charge proportion to their sizes. In this example, you see that Q1 is in contact from the outside to Q2. The total charge is equal to plus 6Q. So the new charge of Q1 will be equal to, it will take the 1/3 of the charges, so plus 2Q, and Q2 has the rest of the charges, or 2/3 of the charges, which is equal to plus 4Q. But if it is touched to the inner side of the curve, as it is seen in the second figure, all charge is collected outer surface of the curve, and the one that's touched becomes neutral. So Q1, the one that's touched, becomes neutral, and all charge is taken by Q2, so it becomes plus 6Q charged.